when we start to live our life more from that inner guidance and what I call soul connection, soul power, and start to be guided in a more spiritual way. There can be a bit of a tug of war sometimes by other past belief systems, insecurities, vulnerabilities, and wounding, because we're all never stop believing in your intuition, in your inner guidance, and your inner knowing. Now, one of the biggest challenges that so many people are struggling with at the moment is discernment, and they're questioning the reality, they're questioning the world, they're questioning things around them. But the reality is, when we rely on everything outside and we don't have good spiritual connection, good soul power, and a good connection with our guidance and our intuition, we can be more manipulated by the external world. And even when you have strong intuition, strong inner connection, and a good spiritual or a good soul connection, soul power, none of us are immune to the world around us. That's just facts. We all are, in many ways, we can be conditioned, we can be programmed, but we can also get hijacked in everyday situations, especially with triggers, our emotional reactions to things, and things that may be embedded in us in relation to our belief systems. But one of the things that I think you should never do is stop believing in yourself and stop believing in your inner guidance, in your intuition, your inner knowing. Now, sometimes we can think something is an intuition, and lack of discernment, we realise it was a trigger or just a belief system, or we weren't seeing the full picture. But for lots of reasons, I believe that intuition and inner knowing and believing in yourself, believing in your own sovereignty is vital right now. And I'm going to share something that is one of the reasons why you've not seen me in video for a long, long time, and why I've been mostly putting out, particularly on YouTube and things, old videos that were maybe from courses or other content that I had done for maybe some past programs and things like that, or some that were just faceless. And you're talking about the last 8 months, I had started to have an incredible problem with my neck and my skull, a terrible pain, and I had problems for a long time, but this started to become a bigger problem over the last year, nearly into 3 years. And so much so the last 8 months that I was getting kind of disabled by it. Now, quite a few things had happened that you could say that I had some vulnerabilities there. And then some other things that just I was unlucky happened, and getting maybe wrong treatments and things like that. Just things then kind of made it worse in different situations. But one of the things that came out of this situation, which reminded me so strongly about how important it is we listen to ourselves. And sometimes when our body, our intuition, our inner guidance is trying to tell us something, that we listen, and to recognize when we are getting hijacked by other people's opinions, other people's projections, and sometimes even other people's naivety. Or I suppose it's like everything. We all have our own path to live, and we all have our own journey, and we all have lots of things that go on in our life, and often even some of the people closest to us don't always see the bigger picture, because they're only seeing it through their lens, and they're only seeing part of the lens. And this is a big lesson for life, because we are all so used to giving our power over to other people in all sorts of areas of life. And even those of us who tend to go more into the spiritual or more go within our guidance, we still, every single human being on earth has some sort of conditioning, programming, and even bias. We just don't always see it. And because we all have that human aspect, even though we're spiritual at heart, there is that human aspect. I faced a really difficult situation where I had a situation to do with my health that I always felt was a structural issue, and certain evidence would have suggested that, but other, you could maybe call it specialists or other doctors and things like that, every time I mentioned this particular thing, it was kind of poo-hooed and it was not really listened to or addressed as serious. It was always almost like I was then distracted to focus on something else, and something else got priority. But through a variety of circumstances, and now looking at it, I realised why the circumstances had to happen. And it was so that I would get a missing piece of the jigsaw and recognise maybe the core issue of something else that was going on. And it's like everything in life, sometimes we're given signs, synchronicities, we're guided, but we don't see the higher perspective. We're not at the top of the mountain. We're not in the sky. We're not the ego looking down or God looking down or the universe. We're not seeing the bigger picture. But if we trust it in our guidance and we keep going with that in our guidance, we're often shown the way. It's just we get impatient. It's just we get distracted by other people's opinions. We can start doubting ourselves. And I know for me, I started to really question my sanity and a lot of things, but I kept going. And to put a long story short, it was getting so bad, it was horrendous. And if it wasn't for some of the other complications that I have, I have extreme noise sensitivity, which is a severe form of hyperacusis, which means that it's disabling painful. So certain noises going out and certain things can trigger what is classed as like a non-epileptic type seizure thing. And if it wasn't that, I'd have probably, taken myself down to A&E to deal with this situation. But anyway, let's put it this way, the universe had kept pointing to me to a machine that was in the States. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how am I going to get to the States? But I seen this particular machine that actually, in a way, brought me to a type of clinic, right? And I had been keeping an eye on this on Instagram, and I watched different things, and many of the people that were using this had a lot of the symptoms, not all, but a lot of, there was different variables of symptoms of some of the things that I have been suffering. Now, I had some other rare things, but it really, my instincts had told me that this was part of the issue. And it was also related to something that I had for over 37 years and had mentioned to the medical profession for over 37 years, and they haven't listened. And anyway, in divine timing, this one piece of equipment, because there was the type of scan, it's a specialised type of scan, and then another type of machine that actually does the treatment. Well, in some cases. I discovered that the actual scan there was now one in Edinburgh, and a new type of chiropractic clinic. So for a lot of reasons, I decided to book that. And I was in a situation where I'd actually considered going for a private MRI. Long story short, there seemed to be some sort of mix-up with appointments, and I had got accused of not turning up for appointments. So lots of things had happened, and I was waiting. And I thought, how long am I going to wait for these appointments, and how am I going to get to the solution? And my health was deteriorating, my cognitive ability, my brain. I was actually having really serious challenges with memory, with doing certain tasks for my business. and things around the house, my function was getting, and I wasn't really quite sure what the cause of that. I had some ideas, couldn't be sure. So basically, I went and got this scan, and lo and behold, the scan revealed what I suspected. My C1, my C2 was out, and it was causing that when it's out like this, it can cause all sorts of complications that many of what I was suffering. It puts pressure, and also you could see the impact that it was having in the upper cervical area. And it would also appear that part of at least the issue had been long term, which would explain a lot of things. So I've started, and I'm only starting my sessions, and the biggest part of the treatment goes on for 12 weeks. But one of the things that I noticed right away when the very first session, even though it's quite gentle manipulation, it's done very differently than most chiropractor, was right away I felt a release from my back, and where an area where I've suffered a lot of nerve pain and issue, and at one point I actually couldn't feel that area. There was part of it I couldn't feel, and then there was another part that was like, put it this way, if I was in a car, I could feel, or even in the house, I could often feel the vibrations of vehicles through the house, right through the hip. That's how could you say, sensitive the nerves were. And right away, I could feel that pressure being released, and I could start feeling some of the skull, maybe to not the same degree, but that being released. So I could feel that there's something had instantly happened, and I had a few other symptoms. Now, other than that, there has been other things, and I have to, unfortunately, have to go down the mainstream, and I'm waiting for more information and more results and some other tests in relation to some of the complications that may have actually come from this fact it wasn't treated and it wasn't addressed. And, the pressure into maybe the brain stem and whatever. But and the nervous system, which is really interesting. But one of the things that it reminded me of is that we know our body better than anyone else, often. And to a certain degree, that we know when something isn't right, and there can be kind of signs and symptoms that don't always get listened to. And you have to trust yourself on that level, but you also have to trust this when you've inner guidance. I had a lot of inner guidance to do with this, and there was a reason why I went right down many body workers and sought lots of different help. But sometimes it's easy to start feeling as if you want to give up and you think there's no hope, and there is not a rainbow, there's not, is it called gold at the end of the rainbow, or there's, something at the end of that path, that struggle. But the reality is sometimes things come in the timing not that we plan or the ego wants, but in divine timing. And no matter what, if you have something in your life and your intuition, your inner guidance, your body is trying to tell you, despite what other people say, particularly when it comes through as an intuitive hit, right? Often intuitive hits are very different from wounding and beliefs and triggers. Intuitive hits come through that it's like, can be all sorts of ways that come through. But it's, for example, you can get sometimes inner knowing, you're just almost given information. You don't know why you know something, but you just know it. And there's a confidence and assurance to it. But when you allow the mind and the ego to take over, then that's when you have problems, because what you do is you start gaslighting yourself. Now, we're living in a world that is gaslighting the masses all the time in so many ways. So people are doubting themselves because there's such mass gaslighting, and everyone has so many different opinions that, particularly if you're highly empathic and highly sensitive, you have to learn to be able to protect your energy from other people's projections and other people's opinions and other people's even energy. Because even people particularly if it's something that isn't really important and you're like with your help and things like that, it can be very easy for other people to project their opinions that are not correct, that is not true, that is their stuff, or is only based on their belief system or the narrow view that they're seeing things through. And that can be even sometimes specialists. Now, one of the things that helped me recently was, I kept asking for the right help and I asked for divine help. And I had to also recognize, and this is a thing that's really important as well, that I had to start recognizing that help was actually coming in a different way than what I would have planned. I always, prefer the holistic route. But what happened, a series of events happened in this situation where I realized that I had to go down a certain path in one area of it for also a certain amount of healing. I'm someone that has faced a lot of challenges sometimes with the medical system, where some discrimination, you could call it neglect, and even sometimes abuse of power. And that means that you're not always, you're a wee bit more suspicious and cautious when you go down, and you go down a certain route, particularly when you've had situations where people not always listened and not always be discerning and whatever. But the interesting thing was I was met with so much compassion with so many areas of this journey. And, also people questioning things about the way I was actually treated in the past and questioning, what kind of support did I get, what kind of help along a long path, which was very clear. I was just left to go on with it. And in a way had actually became very hyper independent and trying to be self-responsible as much for my health. But we all have weaknesses, we all have areas that maybe we're not that great at, but also not recognizing when I had to be really more firm about asking for other type of help. And it was an OT. I had asked for some other types of help. When an OT came in, she was very kind and listened and gave me some really good advice about how to get the right help. And what I realized was I had been so busy, even on one level I knew in my intuition and my inner guidance, but even if you would call it basic, some basic principles, there was definitely something structurally going on. What I realized was I had started to doubt myself and I had started to question my own reality and started doubting that, thinking, am I not right? Am I not, am I imagining this? And this is the same situation that is playing in the playing field, as you say, in the media. It's playing in society right now. They've been playing this game for a long time, but it's really hyped up the last, 5, 6 years, where to try and take people from their power and from their own wisdom and discernment and intuition, they gaslight them, they confuse them, they bombard them with all these other information or try to distract you. Now, that can happen in all areas of the life. And sometimes they can be also psychic and spiritual things that are going on that are trying to take us off our path, trying to take us away from our power and our sovereignty. And it's so important that you listen to yourself, right? When particularly you get an annoying or there's something you just know, and it can be a very, very lonely road when you've been through that. And when you know that you have a lot of judgments or people are not seeing certain things and they're not believing certain things. And of course, we still have to, it's okay to challenge yourself on one level and to also recognize where am I being do I need to be a bit more open? Do I need to look at this situation from a more perspective, because there's always other factors. And I'm going to, be the first to say that a lot of the symptoms that I have will be a mixture of things. But one of the things is that in this world, we're conditioned not to be sovereign, not to listen to inner guidance and inner power, not to take responsibility for a lot of areas in life. Because, I stay in the UK, and it's very much a nanny state in many ways, and it's becoming more. And this, if you look at censorship and you look at the amount of control and manipulation of power, and I've mentioned this before, if you look at the mother and father archetype, when a mother and father is, when there is narcissistic traits, or they are fighting for power or abuse and they're not very healthy, they take it out on their children and they abuse and manipulate the children. Now, some mothers and fathers will be aware of what they're doing, and some people with a very low consciousness won't be aware of the manipulation and control and all sorts of things that they're doing to children. But that is what's happened in the world. Part of being sovereign is listening to your intuition, noticing the signs and synchronicities, and allowing the help to come in. Like, sometimes we don't notice the right help. Sometimes we believe it has to come a certain way. And we have to trust when it maybe show up in a way that we would normally not go down, or we think, oh no. You have to trust sometimes the signs and synchronicities and the help and the support to take you where you want to be, or where you feel that, for whatever healing or to achieve something. It could be your business, your life, relationships, anything. And no matter what other people think, your journey, your spiritual path and your journey is your journey. And other people are not always there to understand that. And often we don't always see the bigger picture, and it's not till other things happen then we get maybe aha moments and think, that's why that had to happen. Because if that hadn't happened, this, and this wouldn't happen. So never stop trusting yourself. Never stop trusting your intuition. Never stop trusting your inner guidance, your sovereignty, the work towards personal sovereignty. Now, also, it's always important to learn discernment. What is intuition? What's actually a trigger? What's a belief? Now, a trigger is like a fear or an emotional reaction to something, where, for example, you don't like someone, or someone reminds you of somebody, or that kind of trigger is often just a wounding. It's a trigger. Or when you have a belief or a conditioned pattern, you're setting a belief, often your intuition can come in with these kind of intuitive hits that actually seem to come out of nowhere, and you don't know why. It's almost that you're given a piece of information or a nudge, and it can be something that seems very bizarre or goes against the status quo, right? So this is why it's so important. And often it can also guide you to go down a path, look into things, explore things that you would never have considered. And it also can sometimes really, really challenge your belief systems, challenge you what you previously thought about a situation or a thing. And that's why, if you are wanting to live a more spiritual or soul-aligned life, we have to be willing to be open and to be guided, right? And to trust in that way. So trust yourself, but also it's almost trust yourself with an open door to be open to the signs and synchronicities and the information. and trust that you don't see the full path in front of you, that you don't have that higher perspective. You're not standing at the top of the mountain. You're not in the sky looking down and seeing the bigger picture. You're not able to see the future. And you're not even always able to see the future and the past and all the different things in life and all the other people that you're connected to and as part of your path. You cannot see that bigger picture. But that doesn't mean that you don't have that inner compass, that you've not been given the gifts of wisdom. You've not been given everyone has the gifts within them. They all have an inner compass. We all have intuition and a higher self and an aspect of us that is, what I believe is a channel of divinity, a channel of God, a channel of spirit. But the problem is, that is often not a default. So when we are practicing and we're starting to move towards living a life like that, yes, sometimes there can be a certain amount of things that you get, your discernment can be a bit off, and that's okay. But you don't ever stop believing in you, because you at your core are God's essence. You're made in the likeness of God and spirit and the light. And you are just as important as everyone else. And you have that ability. It just sometimes, it's like everything. We all have gifts. And some of those gifts we naturally start using from a young age, and we're encouraged. And some of us gravitate towards certain things and we master certain things. And there's other things we maybe get lazy or we're fearful of, or we've not been given the encouragement or the right support. Now more than ever, it's so important to listen to your inner guidance and your intuition, right? And practice with small things. And if this is an area you need help, I have lots of things about intuition and to help you, tools and things. And lots of other things that will help you with your sovereignty, will help you keep grounded and more energetically strong and protected in the Empaths Toolkit. And I also do have another course to develop your intuition. Well, that is actually inside the Empath, but it's also available separately. But that might be on one of my other platforms, but I will put both of the links below. Now, I'm not doing one-to-ones at the moment, and most of it I'm not. I'm just selling a lot of my self-study programs. So there's lots of things that can help you in a lot of areas that I talk about. So you can check things over at theileneburns.co.uk, and that points to show you to my platform, right, that there's different courses. But I do plan to, over the next few months, with some help from some friends, healers and therapists that are friends, I will be creating a community, and I've wanted to do this from last year, but just to do with circumstances. I had started something, I think it was, I don't remember how far back that was, but it was maybe sometimes last year, and I really was having all sorts of struggles, so I had to stop. But there's a few of us want to do this, so it's more like a team effort. And I will be letting you know more about that. But just remember, you have, even when you feel as if, even if you're at this point and think, oh my God, I'm starting to, because people are so many levels of their waking up at things. And if you've got to a point and said, I really think I've been asleep, or I've not noticed things, and I'm starting to see things clearer, but have felt that you've kind of, how could you say, felt as if you've had a disconnection with your inner guidance or your intuition, don't worry. It's about making sure that you have enough quiet time. Traditional type meditations are very good at quieting the mind. One of the problems today is that guided meditations are lovely, and I, as you'll see on my channel, I do have lots of guided meditations that can be very helpful to relax. They can be very helpful to help you into the subconscious. But the challenge about that is when people are guiding and you rely on someone guiding you, and it's those words and particularly meditations that are more like guided visualization, where someone's been taking me through a story or saying words about something, instead of helping you have more space in your mind, have more quietness, get back to your own soul. The problem with that is that people then struggle to really listen to their inner voice. So I always believe that learning some traditional meditation techniques can be helpful, and I do have a few in the Empaths Toolkit, and they can just build up on them, and the more that you do them, you'll start to feel that you are it's easier to have those longer quiet spaces, which really help. So I'm just going to keep it short. I could go on about other things, but just bear with me at the moment. As I said, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not doing much and I'm starting to get tired. But I hope you're all doing well. Hope you are taking care of yourself and your family, and you are keeping strong, because remember, we have all the tools within us, right? Don't get so bogged down with everything that we're getting bombarded with that it pulls you down. Because the more that we stay in our power, we make better decisions in our daily life. We have better discernment. And remember, there's always more of us than there is of them. Those who are in all sorts of games in the world, remember, there is more of us, and there is more light than sometimes we see as well. And we've got to keep that in our consciousness. Okay. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Bye bye.